Howdy, and welcome to week 12 of our piano adventure. Today we'll be in Unit 3, but we're going to be doing the other side of Unit 3. So as last week we did our 2-octave scales, this week we're going to be working on inversion blending. All right, now I have 3 different inversion blending tables. Today we'll be taking a look at the first one. All right, now before that, obviously we will be doing our rhythm warm-up focused on syncopation. Then we'll get to the inversion blending table. And then the third thing we've got on the agenda today is some sight reading, a piece that I wrote not only to involve the inversion blending, but also add something that is a lot of fun called the pedal tone. All right, so we'll be doing pedal tones, and we're gonna change our time signatures a little bit in that piece as well. So without further ado, let's go over to the drum and get warmed up. Okay, here we are with our week 12 rhythm warm-up. We're going to be starting with our metronome at 50 BPM on the downbeats, and we'll go ahead and get started now on line 1. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2. Get ready to change your hands. Here we go. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, top line, hands together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, 3, and 4, and. Excellent. All right, let's turn our metronome up to 55 now, and this will now represent the upbeat for line 2. 1, 2, 3, and here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and switch your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and top line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. There we go. Now that one was kind of sparse, right? And we need to be ready for that as musicians. You're going to see all kinds of things from where you're very involved rhythmically to parts, especially if you're in an ensemble, where you have just a few upbeats scattered through here and there. So you have to be very patient, and you have to keep track of your downbeats just as seriously as if you were playing, and then play those notes where they come in. All right. Now, the exact opposite is sometimes you're just meant to play over and over. We've done this with quarter notes before. We're going to do it with eighth notes right now. Just a nice steady stream of eighth notes. Let's turn our metronome down to 30 BPM. We will be going at 60. The metronome is at halftime, and now this will be the upbeat of the 1 and the 3 for line 3. 1, 2, 3, and here we go. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, change your hands. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and top line. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and Okay, now we're going to turn our metronome up to 35, which means we will be going at 70 BPM. And now we will hear the metronome click on the second and the fourth upbeat. Here we go on line 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, switch hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, hands together, top line. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there we have it. All right. Now that we're all warmed up, let's head on back over to the piano. Let's talk about inversion blending. So the first thing I want to draw your eye to on this table is this top row right here. And you can see that those are our roots, okay? So we have our circle of fifths written out in linear form. And in fact, this is written in counterclockwise direction. And so we're going C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, right? We're going counterclockwise. But one thing you'll also notice is that when we play this table, we're going to ascend and descend. So you actually will, once we get to this C over here, we will come back. And when we go backwards across the table, we will be moving in clockwise formation around the circle. So we're going to get to do it both ways. This is going to be another exercise that solidifies our understanding of the circle. And so let's dive a little deeper into how this is going to work. Now, the thing is that all of the chords that are adjacent to each other on the circle are considered to be related. And we've seen that because we know that the 1 and the 5 and the 4 are always right next to each other on the circle. But it turns out that when you dive a little deeper and you look at the notes of all of those, any adjacent chord on the circle is going to share a note, right? And so all of these red notes here are demonstrating that that is the shared note between those two adjacent chords, all right? And because of this, we can do something very cool where instead of having to pick our hand up and continuously plop down root positions, right? We're pianists. We don't want to be working too hard, right? We don't want to have to be lifting our arms up every time we want to move around the piano, right? So we take advantage of the fact that not only do we have a similar note, but if you look at the other notes, we only have to move from E to F is a half step, and from G to A is a whole step. So between all of these chords, one note always stays the same, one note moves a half step, and one note moves by a whole step. And so that is why it's blending, right? We're doing the least amount of motion necessary to move from chord to chord. And in fact, that is what I have written right here. So this is the idea of the open and the closed hand positions. You see, when we're playing scales, we definitely talked about using our whole arm, which we always want to do, right? We always want to use our whole arm when we're moving across, so that we're not twisting too much and flapping our arms like a bird. However, when you're doing scales and you're doing a lot of finger work, right, we tend to sort of do some tucking motions and some lifting motions like that, whereas when we're moving around with chords, we're really opening our hands and closing our hands. If you think about the bones in your hand that run all the way down through the base of your palm, when all of those bones are together, we consider that a closed hand position. And when your hand widens and it opens, you have a open hand position, right? So the thing is that when you're on the keyboard, you don't always have to pick your arm up and move over every time you want to move. Sometimes all you need to do is open your hand, right? And then close your hand, and you can actually work your way up the keyboard by opening and closing your hand, right? And so that's what we're going to be working on here with inversion blending, okay? Now a few more things before we actually put our hands on this. Now down here at the bottom, we want to see what inversions and root positions we're actually going to be using, and you can see that a pattern actually emerges, and it's always root second first, root second first, root second, first, right? So on and so forth. And so the whole point being is that these root positions are sort of your home base, right? And if we're thinking about open and closed positions, our root is where our hand is closed. Second, it's open. First, it's open, back to root. So it's kind of like closed, open, open. Closed, open, open, and we slowly inch our way across the keyboard that way. Now remember, as you're inching across, you still are going to be moving your arm in conjunction with the open and closed hand positions, all right? So when we actually do this, what we're gonna do is we're gonna practice it hands separately, then we're gonna try to put it hands together, and remember, we want to read from left to right, and then we're gonna go back from right to left, which means we will be going clockwise and counterclockwise around the circle, all right? So let's go ahead and put our hands on the keyboard and see what this looks like. Okay, let's start things off with our right hand, all right? And we're gonna put that on our C major. And from there, our thumb is gonna stay the same, our middle finger is gonna go up to F, and our pinky is gonna raise up to A, all right? So as you can see, that was a very easy transition to go from C to F. Now, the middle finger is going to stay the same on F, and to get from F to B flat, we're only going to move the outer two voices. So as you can see, I'm still in an open hand position, and I will close that hand position now back when I get to this first root position of E flat, right? We'll open our hand again to get to A flat. We'll rotate the fingers around while keeping our middle finger the same to D flat, and then we're going to do a closed hand position onto G flat. We'll open our hand back up to get to B, keep that B in the middle and rotate the fingers around to an E major chord. And that brings us back to a root position in A. All right, open our hand back up to D major, rotate around to G, and back to C. All right, and then we go backwards. So from C, we go down to G. We keep the D, we rotate the other ones. We're going to keep the A, we're going to lock it back into root position. We're going to go from A down to E, keep the B in the middle, rotate around to our B chord. We're going to close our hand back onto our F sharp or G flat chord, open back downwards to D flat, rotate around to A flat, E flat, B flat, F, and back to C. All right, now I'm gonna do it with my left hand, but I won't talk so much through it, so you can kind of just watch the process, all right? So we'll start with our C. Eventually muscle memory will kick in, all right? And you'll sort of lock into that open and closed hand position, and it really gets pretty easy after a minute. But I encourage you to do your due diligence and don't just let yourself get through this by reading through it with muscle memory, all right? This would definitely be worth trying to memorize this or do it by memory, and also saying the name of the chord as you play it, right? These chord shapes are so important. These are the basic chord shapes that will make all of the chords that you will ever see. So we want to be able to recognize them not just in the root position, but we want to be able to recognize them in all of their inversions. So if you're looking at the keyboard and you're naming what you see as you do it, it will help you later on when you're reading off the paper and you see a first inversion E flat chord, and instead of having to hunt and pick all those lines and spaces, you just recognize it and you're like, there we go, that's an E flat major chord in first inversion or second inversion, whatever, right? So this second time, or this last time I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna put my hands together, but I'm gonna read, or I'm not even gonna read, I'm doing it by memory myself because I've done this so many times, right? So I'm gonna say out loud the names of the chords as I play them. Here we go, hands together. C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, E, A, D, G, C, G, D, A, E, B, G flat, D flat, A flat, E flat, B flat, F, and back to C. All right, so there you have it. If you're having any trouble with this, don't worry. Remember, I'm playing through these at a medium to up tempo because I need to get through them for this video, but you can practice this as slowly as you need to and take as much time as you need to process this information, all right? But now we're gonna take a look at our sight reading piece. Here is our sight reading piece for the day, Pedal to the Metal. And it's going to be combining a few different things. In our right hand, we're going to be using inversion blending, and in our left hand, as you can see, we're going to be using a pedal tone. And what that means simply is that you're going to be maintaining one single note, usually with some kind of rhythm. Right here we have just a steady stream of eighth notes, and we're going to be holding a D while the harmonies dance on top of that with our right hand. All right. Now here's the thing, because I'm using inversion blending, I sort of stepped slightly out of the traditional usage of harmony, right? So like ones and fives, and I'm really moving around the circle a little bit more. So because I'm not exactly using a textbook strategy of harmony and 1 to 5s and functionality like that, I ended up leaving the key signature blank and simply wrote in the accidentals in the exact way that I want you to play them. And that's a pretty common thing in this kind of style, where there's not really a key signature as much as there's a key center that you're moving around in unusual ways, all right? So there we have it. We have our D pedal tone, and that's gonna last pretty much throughout the whole piece, all right? And then we're gonna actually start on our D major chord. All right, now here's the thing, as we were looking at the inversion blending exercise, we noticed that the adjacent chords to each other do share tones, right? So from our D major, I went to a G major, okay? And we can even write some of this in as we go so we can keep track of it. So from our D major where we started, we moved to a G major, which is perfectly normal circle of fifths movement, right? And in fact, the D that is in the bass is still like super cool because it is contained within both of those chords. But we're gonna really start to stretch that out, stretch that relationship that the D has to the other chords, because as we get to the next one, we're still moving around the circle of fifths, but now we're on a C. And now that D and the C over the D is gonna sound a little bit more nuanced because the D plays a lesser role in the key of C. It's not a chord tone, but it is in that key, right? And the sound will continue to get nuanced as we continue to move around the circle. From the C, we go to F. From the F, we go to B flat. And yes, from the B flat, we make our way to E flat. Now, once I got here, why did I choose to go all the way to E flat? Well, first of all, as you'll see in just a moment when we put our hands on it, it sounds kind of cool, right? But think about it. E flat is a half step away from D, right? So I've realized we could use half steps to get back to where we went, to where we started, right? So instead of returning to the 1 using the 5 like usual, I went all the way around the circle until I got to the chord that is actually a half step above D, and then I just dropped all of those half steps back onto our D, right? And that's where the fun really starts, okay? So then we go back to our E flat, and we take that to this fun sound right here, which is our F sharp chord, okay? Now, because this F sharp chord resolves in some cool ways using half steps, right? And so that is like, while we are studying functional inversion blending inversions that are next to each other on the circle, it is also normal to be using these voices that are half steps away from each other on chords that are not on the circle, or not adjacent to each other on the circle. For instance, D and E flat are not next to each other on the circle, but we're still using this voice leading or this inversion blending by taking advantage of half-step motion that exists between those two chords, okay? So once we get to this F sharp, we kind of have some fun things that we can do where we could go to a G, right? It's right there from F sharp. And the G contains the D, right? So when we have that D hitting up against the F sharp, there's a lot of tension, right? And music is tension and it's release. And so here we're building up tension by having this F sharp, right? That's a pretty tense sound, and then you can release that tension, right? By having the G there. So we're playing around with tension and release, although we're not exactly using functional harmony in the traditional sense, right? And then from the G, we return to the F sharp, and from the F sharp, we can take that. Now, the F sharp does contain a B flat in it. And look, you can use those half steps to bring it out and turn the F sharp chord into a B flat, right? So we turned an F sharp chord into a G chord by using all half steps. And then we took advantage of one of the notes inside of F sharp to turn it into a B flat chord, right? So we're having fun with inversion blending here. Traditional inversion blending and non-traditional inversion blending. So here we have our B flat chord, then we're going to return to our little pivot chord that we have here with this F sharp, and finally that's going to bring us back to the D because it shares the F sharp, right? Right here. So from an F sharp, you can get to two very unrelated key centers, either going up to G, or maybe from F sharp to B flat, or maybe even from F sharp to D. You know what I mean? Now, we get to the really cool part, and that is we're gonna change our time signature here at the end. All right, now don't be too freaked out right now when we're talking about 12/8. Sometimes when people see that time signature of 12/8, it looks worse than it is. And you know, if you've learned anything from these videos at this point, it's that most things in music that look really difficult turn out not to be difficult once you put some thought into them. So let's talk about 12/8 for a second. When we were looking at our piece last week with 6/8, we realized that instead of counting each of those 6 individual beats, we're really feeling 6/8 as 2 beats that are 2 groups of 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And what 6/8 is really telling us is that instead of a downbeat and an upbeat and this sort of back and forth musical feel, that we have more of a circular musical feel. Each beat is going to have more of a circular triplet subdivision. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if 6/8 is a way to feel 2 beats with circles, 12/8 is just a way to feel 4 beats with circles, right? So when I see 12/8, I really just think that I'm in 4/4, but instead of feeling ups and downs, I'm feeling 4 circles. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. And you can see that I literally wrote that out, all right? So if we look at what I actually wrote, we have our 1, 2, 3, 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. So we really didn't change the time signature as much as we just changed the feeling from this sort of pedal tone that we had, which was the upbeat feel, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, to a 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, right? So what we really have here isn't so much of a time change as it is a feel change, the feeling of the ups and the downs, or the downs and the ups, and then the circular motion of triplets, okay? Now, just to give a little crash course on those chords, we can see that I actually am maintaining a pedal D because the lowest note is always still going to be centered around this D, all right? So I didn't deviate from the original concept of the piece. And so, of course, we're going to start off with our D chord right here. We're going to move to a G because that's pretty normal. And then we're going to transform that G into a B flat by changing just 2 notes, all right? We're going to go back to our G natural, back to our B flat, and this time I added a little courtesy flat to remind you that this is actually going to be G minor, we have the minor 4, one of my favorite sounds. The minor 4 leading back to the 1. And then of course, we're going to do some crossing over, so watch out because your left hand is going to be shooting up into the treble clef and your right hand is going to be shooting up into the very upper treble clef where we're going to end on a couple of Ds, all right? And so that pretty much explains this whole piece. Let's go ahead and just jump into the right hand first, all right? So we start with our D, and just like good old-fashioned harmonic inversion blending, we're going to be moving around the circle to F. Here we go to B flat, E flat, and now we're going to go down to D, back up to E flat, down to F sharp, up to G, back down to our pivot chord, B flat. All right, just like that, okay? Now, the 12/8 section is just going to be the exact same chord, but in both hands, and that goes something like our D, right? Then we have our G, changing just the top 2 notes to get to a B flat, back to our G major, back to the B flat, G minor, and then our D minor, or our D major, I'm sorry. You're gonna lift up your left hand, put it on this D, and your right hand comes up to the high D, right? Just like that. All right, let's try this hands together. We'll get our left hand going here on the pedal, something like this. All right, there we have it. We've done our inversion blending for the day. I think between this chart and the sight reading piece, you will have all the inversion blending you could ever want for this week. And remember, if you'd like to purchase the sheet music or this guide or any of the rhythmic warm-ups, you can do so at my website, pianodojo.com. And happy practicing. I'll see you next week with some more 2-octave scales.